All right, I'm going to read chapter 14. The pain and the blood and the gore. 4 blocks away, Billy suddenly found himself in a brightly lit butcher shop, jostled by a crowd of enormous pigeon-breasted middle-aged women shouting to make himself heard over the din of their chatter and the roars of butchers ordering about the weasel-faced boys who were lugging hunches and tubs of meat in and out of the refrigerator room in the rear. That was a long sentence. Then a butcher saw Billy jumping and jumping among the women and asked for his order, and Billy gave it. And suddenly he was shoved up close to the chopping block, and the butcher slapped down 10 black worms as big as snakes, and Billy tried to say they were too big. He'd choke on them, but the butcher couldn't hear him over the thumps of his cleaver and the din of the women, and the hoarse shouts of the other butchers, and before Billy knew what was happening, he was seated at the table in Longchamp's restaurant in Times Square in New York City, with a large napkin tied under his chin, and a waiter was uncovering a platter on which lay one of the huge black worms, coiled snakily, a red rose wobbling in the center of its coils. Ew. How could I ever finish it, said Billy, and cut into a mammoth coil. Steaming pink juice flooded out. Billy ate and ate and ate and ate and then looked, and he must have eaten more than that. And then he looked again, and there was no hole at all. He had eaten and eaten, nothing at all. And then he felt something cold on his ankles and looked under the tablecloth, and there were 2 more of the huge worms wound around and around his ankles. And then he felt something weighing down his arm, and he looked, and there was another worm wound around his arm, glaring hungrily at him with its bloodshot eyes. And from everywhere in the vast room, winding between the tables, waiters approached carrying huge silver serving platters. Billy opened his eyes. For the first moment in the moonlight flooding his bedroom, his 2 bare feet sticking up out of the bottom of the covers looked like 2 huge white worm heads. Ooh. And then he realized that he had been dreaming and sank back into his pillow, the nightmare melting away. There were no huge worms as big as pythons. He was home in bed. His parents were asleep in the next room. His stomach rumbled. But suppose Joe hadn't been lying. The hair stood up on the back of his neck. Or suppose Joe had made it all up, but had been right anyway, without knowing it. A shutter banged. Billy glanced out the window and saw the moon riding among the tossing leaves. His stomach rumbled and gurgled. He groaned. Suppose he was dying. He'd heard of people waking up in the middle of the night with pains in their stomachs, and then, as the windows turned gray in the dawn, they died. Toadstools, soured lobsters, tainted pork. That was a pain. He clutched his stomach, and groaning, half fell, half staggered out of bed and hobbled toward the door, bent double. Maybe there was an antidote. He whimpered. It didn't hurt a lot. But nothing ever did to begin with, did it?